Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. And it's been another wall-to-wall week. New York City on the cliff. It's an interesting twist for me. I made a quick trip to New York City last weekend for a family event. My observations are not very positive. I flew into LaGuardia and stayed in Brooklyn. I do not understand anyone wanting to live there. The noise level is ridiculous. Traffic was at a standstill most of the time. Naturally, the big focus is on the fast approaching mayoral election. As I call him, the dirty commie, Mamdani is still way in the lead. Remember, I grew up during the first Cold War. The label of Democrat socialist, in my opinion, is just silliness. Call him what he is, for goodness sake. Anti-Semite fits. Anti-American values fits. Why would any sensible American vote for this clown? The current mayor, Eric Adams, has already dropped out. That was a surprise for me. Generally, the incumbent always has an advantage. Also, given the chronic mess that is New York City, I do not think that he did that bad a job. Many are pushing Curtis Silva, the GOP candidate, to drop out in order to give Andrew Cuomo a one-on-one with Mamdani. I can see both sides to this. This also presumes that sensible people would move from Sliwa to Cuomo. However, Cuomo's record is terrible. We all remember him sending seniors with COVID to retirement homes where they could sicken other seniors. He also led the no cash bail movement. Picking one loser over another is hard to do. If the commie is elected, even though many of his platform planks are not likely to be enacted, I expect the exodus of wealthy and middle class will accelerate like nobody's business. I say accelerate since that exodus has been rolling for about 2 decades now. Corruption in the Capitol. Anyone surprised? Many who comment on LinkedIn are eager to see some real prosecutions after the total misuse of the U.S. justice system under the Biden-Harris administration. Well, first there are the indictments. Very recently, John Bolton, who was an insider to Trump and then turned against him, has been indicted for both possessing secret government materials and sharing them with others who are not authorized. Staying with the good news, former FBI director and generally a jerk, in my considered opinion, was indicted for lying to Congress. And that, of course, is Jim Comey. And he has vigorously protested and raised legal challenges. Let's see how that goes. And of course, the most fitting indictment of all, New York Attorney General Letitia James charged with mortgage fraud, which is hilarious given that is what she claimed that Trump did. She has made some very boisterous speeches following her indictment. Frankly, I wanted to see her convicted before her silly speeches. Now, I really want to see her in prison. No indictment yet for former Trump prosecutor Jack Smith, so we'll have to keep watching that one. Apparently, the Hatch Act is being invoked there. This is when federal employees get involved in certain political activities to influence an election. That charge does not light up for me, but hey, we'll see what happens. Look, an indictment or investigation is just that, a claim or trying to make a claim. After all, unless you're a J6er, every American is entitled to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So let's see how these claims turn out. Maybe interesting. Adding humor to the mess as the lefties are screaming like they got their hands crushed in the car doors. Hey, the response by the current administration to the lawfare by the Biden-Harris administration is very mild so far, in my opinion. At the same time, the feds have confirmed that many of us careful observers already knew. Under the Biden-Harris administration, FEMA, the emergency folks, played political games, denying aid to areas like Florida and Western North Carolina, known to be conservative areas. Department of Homeland Security investigators identified aid distribution that included Hurricane Ida in 2021 to Hurricane Milton in 2024. Most of us heard the story of clowns on the federal payroll skipping houses that had a Trump sign or other GOP candidate sign out front. So, draining the swamp sounds like a good idea to me. Redistricting turnabout is fair play. Speaking of the left screaming without a good reason, let's take a look at redistricting. Supposedly, the ball got rolling when Texas decided to redistrict, which produced a few more GOP seats. Well, Gavin No Sense got excited and decided to violate his own state laws to supposedly make it fair for Dems. The problem for No Sense is that it is a fraudulent claim. Here are the real stats. California, 40% GOP, 17% of the seats. Massachusetts, 35% GOP, no seats. Connecticut, 38% GOP, no seats. New York, 42% GOP, 26% of the seats. Maryland, 38% GOP, 12% of the seats. New Mexico, 44% GOP, no seats. This is a fraudulent, stupid deal that these Democrats are doing. And the interesting thing is, I think they're going to get it back in their face. When you complain when the other guys do it, but not when you guys do it, that is pure hypocrisy. The latest report is that North Carolina is redistricting to make sure the GOP there also pulls more seats. So this has turned into a fair game, and the GOP is now ready to play after many decades of being screwed by the Democrats. As my regular listeners know, I favor a nonpartisan districting system. Start in one corner of the state, count citizens and legal residents until the right number is reached, and that is District 1. Keep going. We need to end this crazy gerrymandering that's been going on for over 2 centuries in the United States. Running out of labor? Really? There is a mantra recently raised that Americans don't want to work and that we are running out of laborers due to the Trump administration policies. Well, balderdash. Every able-bodied person can have a job in America. Want the government to help you with medical care and groceries? Get up off your butt and go to work. It's that simple, folks. I was especially angry when I heard that the head of Land O'Lakes Dairy Products was claiming that there will be shortages of their products since illegals are gone. Hey, this is a brand name that charges top dollar for its products. Surely they can afford to pay American workers to do the job. And remember, in America, if someone is here illegally, they cannot work legally. For a century, we've had a guest farm worker program. That is still pending. There are people to pick crops under that program. At the same time, a bipartisan fix to the current immigration mess should be a high priority. I commented on this in a recent Saving America. We can expedite citizenship for good people without damaging our society. Funny how the Dems, when they controlled all 3 houses of government under Obama, did not implement these reforms. Cambodian Shen Zi is indicted. One story that I came across involves a worldwide swindle. Shen Zi, also known by first name Vincent, has been indicted on wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy. He's the chairman of Prince Group. The allegations are that he ran compounds in Cambodia where victims were forced to perpetrate crypto scams to steal millions of dollars. The feds are reportedly holding $15 billion in cryptocurrency that Zi may have accumulated fraudulently. This is the kind of federal government activity that I like to see. The defendant, however, is not in custody. If convicted, he could do up to 40 years in prison. Death toll from illegals. The big fraud, of course, is that illegals are wonderful, productive people who are here to help our country. The huge, well-funded anti-ICE protests throughout the country are based on this outright fraud. First, people with goodwill and real papers can apply to come to this country legally. Second, that means if you paid some trafficker to get you through the U.S. border, you're a criminal by definition. More importantly, these folks are not vetted, so criminals and residents of asylums made up a distinct portion of the illegals that flooded America during the Biden-Harris administration. Third, the claim is that folks here legally are being scooped up in the arrest by ICE. This is false on its face. ICE is seeking violent criminals. The tragedies include well-reported cases of young women being raped and murdered. Recently, major vehicular accidents have been involved in the news about illegals driving big rigs. How can any state give an illegal a CDL, commercial driver's license, who cannot speak English? It's totally ridiculous. While we were previously made aware of the heinous personal attacks around the country, recent headlines have involved major accidents. Very recently, 3 persons killed by an illegal from India driving an 18-wheeler in Southern California, and an illegal in Indiana driving 18-wheeler without a commercial driver's license killed 1. A couple months earlier in August, the DHS said an illegal with a California commercial driver's license driving a big rig killed 3 people in Florida. The worst recent case was 6 deaths in California's Napa Valley, caused by a drunk driver who was illegal and had been deported repeatedly. The point here is that state authorities should be acting in the interests of the public and not playing politics with people's lives. Further, the companies hiring these drivers without properly vetting them is a significant threat to public health and safety.
All rise.
Our series interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you will agree that he deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes James Dodson, who is the featured columnist at large for Global Golf Post, the internet's leading golf publication, and author of 17 books, including the best-selling Final Rounds, A Golfer's Life with Arnold Palmer, Ben Hogan, An American Life, A Son of the Game, American Triumvirate, The Dew Sweepers, The Range Bucket List, Faithful Travelers, and The Road to Somewhere and Beautiful Madness. He's also the founding editor of O. Henry Arts and Culture magazine and its sister publication, Pine Straw Magazine and Salt Magazine. He's appeared in several golf documentaries, including The Story of Golf Back 9 at Cherry Hills and American Triumvirate in 2013, which he also wrote the script for and adapted from his best-selling book of the same name. That's something else. As a freelance writer, his work has appeared in more than 50 publications worldwide. His most recent book is The Road That Made America, a modern pilgrim's journey on the Great Wagon Road. And while we normally do not cover sports on Saving America, I could not resist talking about American history. We welcome James Dodson for his first appearance on Saving America.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me. And this is as much a love affair for me, history like you, as golf has been in my life. I mean, this is a book I dreamed of since I was 16. So I'm very pleased to be here and tell you a little bit about it, or tell your viewers a little bit about it.
Well, it's our pleasure, and it's interesting because having, as we talked before we began recording, I've spent a lot of time in Virginia. I've been out the Blue Ridge and been into some of these places. Most recently, we were in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee this summer with the grandkids for in Gatlinburg and things like that. And this is just the heart of the original America, so it's very cool. Jim, as you know, we asked 3 questions to give our listeners a chance to really understand what the book is about. Describe for our listeners the geography of the Great Wagon Road.
The Great Wagon Road was the most used road of colonial America. It really began with the settlement of Pennsylvania by William Penn in 1682. And spread throughout the 18th century. And it ran from Philadelphia out through Lancaster, then York, then out to what today's Gettysburg, and then over to what it was called the Great Valley of Pennsylvania, down through the Valley of Virginia. And this is Western Virginia, Winchester and Roanoke, all the way, then shinnied down into North Carolina a little bit, about past Roanoke, took a little bit of a left turn, crossed into North Carolina, and that's it. Then it crossed western central North Carolina, skirting the mountains down to South Carolina, whereupon it broke into two different distinct roads, still called the Great Wagon Road, and reunited in Augusta, Georgia. 863 miles. I think I finally figured out the length of it. So, but it was a road that brought more than 100, probably 150,000 Scots, Irish, Germans, Lutherans, Moravians, Quakers to the south. And in doing so, sent them west. It was kind of the gate to the west, the gate to the Golden West after the Revolutionary War. So it really was a major, it was the first true migratory road in America. And these were settlers who came from war-torn Europe, and they spread all through the South, and then they headed west, once they got here.
Well, it's a fascinating story. Like I said, I've had the good fortune to visit many of those locations that you've just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How important was the Great Wagon Road to the development of America in its early days?
It's really essential. A friend of mine who's I interviewed a number of eminent historians, Virginians and Pennsylvanians and Carolinians. Had a lot of friends in this book, and I interviewed over 135 people who told amazing tales. It really along the Great Wagon Road, you had, by my count, either 8 or 9 American presidents were born on it or close to it or used it their entire lives. Everybody from Thomas Jefferson to Woodrow Wilson. But it also was part of the earliest part of the American Industrial Revolution in a town like, Lancaster certainly. I mean, you ended up having Bulova watches and the development of watches there. And then neighboring York across the Susquehanna was an industrial dynamo where the computer compressor was invented. The Conestoga wagon was basically invented just outside of Lancaster, the famous wagon that went west that was like an ocean-going ship with its brilliant engineering from essentially German artisans. And it was the most iconic wagon. I think one of the founding revolutionaries said it was the wagon that won the American Revolution. It saved George Washington when he was bedded down west of Philadelphia and losing the war. So you had all of these amazing engineering things. A wonderful historian I loved, really, really great guy named Joe Wilson, who I had the privilege of knowing. He's America's leading roots historian. He told me 15 years ago that the Great Wagon Road was a road that at least a quarter of Americans could trace their ancestry to. It's the road that when the Scotch-Irish came, they brought their balladry and crazy, wonderful fiddle playing and music, and it really was the foundation. You said you were in Pigeon Forge a while ago. Well, that was what Dolly Parton is truly a daughter of the Great Wagon Road, as are most of America's country music people. If they grew up in the game, that's where it came from, down that road. So you almost can't. It's almost too sweeping. And in addition, it was the road where you had the 3 major wars of America, the only road in America where all 3 wars that we fought were shaped along that road.
And that was my third question, to talk about those 3 wars and how the Great Wagon Road tied into that. And of course, I am a big history buff, which is why we wanted to have you on the show.
Well, you probably enjoyed the Winchester chapter where I learned about George Washington, early George Washington's life, what a failure he was, sent there by the royal government of Virginia to set up the bulwark against the French incursion from Ohio. And he was an absolute failure at it, at least in the beginning. And he ran for office, his first office there, after pulling together a unit and heading west and getting his tail whipped by the French. Came back and ran for his first public office, which he lost to an opponent who brought barrels of rum to the polls. And it's just such a great story. And he later credited so much of his success as a cool-headed leader to the terrible things he learned, including he was involved with Edward Braddock, the proud, arrogant um, um, British commander who was brought in to finally kick the French out of the edges of English territory and was massacred. And he was right in the middle of it and had his coach shot through 3 times, 3 horses, barely escaped. As did, by the way, there were 2 wagoners. One was a guy named Daniel Morgan, who turned out to be his hero of the Revolutionary War down in South Carolina, and a guy named Daniel Boone, who was 19 years old. They were both pulling wagons, unknowns, and they cut their horses loose at the middle of the massacre and fled, got away. So many of the earliest battles, the most important battles of the French and Indian War, were fought from and off that road. It led them into Pennsylvania and there. The second one, obviously, is the Revolutionary War, which the same thing. That shifts down to Georgia and South Carolina. So in 1780, when the English took over Savannah and captured over 100,000 American colonials, and it looked like they were going to win the war, George Cornwallis, the kind of fancy, well-educated British commander, who, by the way, had great sympathies for the colonies. He was kind of had a lot of ambiguity about whether they should win or lose. He set off on a march from the coast of Georgia to finally get rid of the Nathaniel Greene's army and chased him all the way up to North Carolina. And it's one of the great stories, really great stories of American history, because Cornwallis's army was a huge, massive army with cannon and of course Tarleton, the famous, infamous, bloodthirsty commander who wiped out. He would hang any sympathizers he met. South Carolina was basically at that time a real wild country full of angry and annoyed Scotch-Irish who hated the English. There was a saying among them that said, "You never bow your head to an Englishman, or he'll cut it off." And they were the most traveled people of the wagon road. They squatted on land. They kept moving for better land, more water and good soil. And they were also tenacious fighters. The Scotch-Irish who came down the wagon road constituted about 70% of the soldiers who fought for the South in the Civil War, and almost that same number in the American Revolution.
And you also had the Swamp Fox run around supporting
Absolutely.
Nathaniel
Yeah.
Greene, and that's
Yeah.
one of the things
Yeah.
that the Brits didn't understand guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
And Francis Scott Marion is credited a lot with
Oh, absolutely.
damaging the British to the point where they moved north up to Yorktown.
Yep. And Daniel Morgan developed a thing called the Flying Army, a lot like what Francis Marion was doing as they came across South Carolina, hanging people, trying to pacify this unpacifiable, group of annoyed and angry Scotch-Irish. And his whole idea was to drive them into North Carolina, which, by the way, had royal connections. North Carolina was one of the hottest beds of the Revolutionary War. There was it had a royal governor, and there was battles across. Anyway, he chased Greene up to Charlotte and then further on up into the state, and landed here in Greensboro, where I live, for the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which technically Greene lost because he left the field, abandoned the field, but it so mortally wounded Cornwallis's army, he had to limp down to the coast to wait for reinforcements. And then, of course, he ventured up to Virginia, Portsmouth area, and of course, the rest is history. The point is that the way this army could travel was over the Great Wagon Road. I mean, he had cannons, and he had massive horses and troops, and you can't move a going through the South Carolina backcountry with an army of that size is quite a feat. And eerily enough, it mirrors what happened to Edward Braddock during the French and Indian War, trying to push this giant army with bands, musicians and drummers down a trail into the wilds of Ohio, and they got killed. They got massacred. So these are wonderful stories, and I want to tell you, I grew up hearing these stories, and I learned about and I opened the book talking about when I was 16. My dad took my brother and I to shoot mistletoe out of his grandfather's abandoned home place, and we ended up by a creek called the Haw River, where my double great grandfather had a grist mill. And that's where I first heard about the Great Wagon Road. My dad said our ancestors came down it. Your mother's German people in Maryland came down it. And I was, my brother and I were both Eagle Scouts. We grew up in the woods, hiking and camping. We also played a little golf, but mostly we were obsessed with history. And my dad was. He was a newspaperman. And I vowed, and as I say at the end of that first little opening, I said, can we go find that road? And he said, well, it's pretty well lost. Maybe someday you'll go find it. And I want to tell you, it really was lost until about 20 years ago, when local historians and civic historians and state cartographers and a lot of people, especially local historical organizations, began to wonder where this road ran. I mean, they knew the general path of it. And over about the last 15 years, they've completely figured out where this road ran. And I want to add one other thing. That's the road that brought almost all of the elements of life that you see today. The first clocks went down that road. The first grapes grown by a Frenchman in Pennsylvania went down that road. The first apples, cultivated apples. I mean, it's an amazing how this was an artery that pumped vitality. German engineering. The Moravians were famous for their beautiful architecture and their amazing handmade structures on doors. And they're musicians. They brought classical music to a wilderness down the Great Wagon Road. That was the Moravians, and there were 3 Moravian settlements along the Great Wagon Road. So it really is the artery that brought culture, civilization, ingenuity, engineering, and good old American pluck. Because it's probably estimated, one historian said to me, there's not a family who traveled down that road. And remember, they were traveling in difficult conditions. Sometimes it was hot in summer, the roads were lost, there were hostiles, there was disease. He said it was not a family, probably before 1760, that didn't lose a member of their party on that road. So it really was an amazing story.
It is, and I hope our listeners will go check it out. What can our audience do to get more information about James Dodson and his books?
Well, I have an author website, James Dodson Author, www.jamesdodsonauthor.com. You can also, I have a Substack that's called One Man's Simple Life, and I love it because I put my columns on it for the last 30 years at the magazines, and people seem to enjoy them. And they're about life stuff, never politics. I'm praying that we sort out our issues in America. And let me just quickly add this, David. On that trip, I did 130 plus interviews with people, and not once did people talk about politics, the divisions of this country. It restored my faith in America, frankly. They can also get it on, obviously, Amazon, and it's in most bookstores still. It came out in July, and I've done SRO evenings, and they continue. And I found people so enthusiastic and inspired to find out about their own ancestors. So it's been a double gift to me.
Please proceed.
Yawn, no kings. The joke that is labeled No Kings took place on a Saturday where the weather was generally very good across the country. Given that we have not had a king since 1776, not sure what they wanted to accomplish. If they don't like the job Trump is doing, then show up at the ballot box, especially during primary elections. Media observers report that the folks who turned out were largely seniors. The production reminded me of the famous Mark Twain quip, "Golf is a good walk ruined." So the folkies got out there and hung with their neighbors, no problem there. Best I can tell, there was no violence in the rally. However, there was violence at an ICE facility in Portland, apparently during the rally. That is very good news that it was not super violent. The rest of us, like me, we were working for a living.
How does the defendant plead?
Foreign grad students who pursue H-1B status will not have to pay the new $100,000 Trump fee. This is certainly good news. As I previously said, this new large fee is not justified and could hurt America's need for specific skills, especially in research and medicine. I note the Trump administration has confirmed that those already here on H-1Bs, if they leave and return, will not be subject to that big fee. There has now been a host of lawsuits filed to block this fee, including many pro-business groups usually viewed as on the Trump administration side.
Please raise your right hand.
The DOJ files a motion for takeover of Lux Urban, a group of 3 New York City hotels. I mentioned I was in New York City recently, caught this actual local story before it went to the feds. And these poor travelers show up in New York City, hotels closed, they've lost their deposit, not getting them back. And it's a pretty tough story. So it ran on the CBS News local in New York City. So now the feds have gotten involved. So due to the Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing, the feds have the authority to step in. This makes a lot of sense, as reportedly the hotel chain kept accepting deposits and making reservations that it did not plan to keep. Sounds like fraud to me. The current head of the chain denies the claims and said that the travel agencies are responsible for their own bookings with clients. They are also fighting the appointment of a bankruptcy trustee by the feds.
Objection, Your Honor.
Presidential pardons, a bad idea. I've opposed presidential pardons for 3 decades. It seems to be getting worse. After the Exhibit A of abuse by the Biden administration, Trump just commuted the sentence and $500,000 fine for former GOP New York Congressman George Santos after serving only 3 months of a 7-year prison term. Note that Santos was convicted of significant crimes. I believe the GOP is supposed to stand for law and order. I reject the claim that he got a longer sentence or bigger fine due to being a Republican.
May I remind you, you're still under oath.
NASA plans a nuclear reactor on the moon. The Secretary of Transportation, on behalf of NASA, announced that the agency is planning a nuclear reactor on the moon for commercial development there, as well as future travel to Mars. While this seems cool, I have to wonder, with a $37 trillion national debt, whether this is the best use of Americans' money. Target is reportedly be done by 2030, which is not that far off. As anyone catching any episode of Saving America knows, however, I am vehemently anti-CCP. Reports are that the CCP is sending a spacecraft to land on the other side of the moon. Rumors are that they may militarize first, or at least claim some or all of the moon. So if the purpose is to keep the CCP from claiming the moon, then I might sign off on this nuclear power deal. Let's watch and see what happens.
Silence in the court.
As we grow up, a common reference for success or failure is the letter grade. Whether we're in grammar school or college, we all want an A grade and certainly regard an F as a big failure. Here at Saving America, we scan the news for reports of celebrities, politicians, or others who just end up in the public eye. So the A grades are awarded to people and organizations for great service to their communities, and the F grades, of course, are unfortunately more common, are awarded to those who need to do a lot better. Singled out for a coveted A grade is President Javier Milei, the current president of Argentina. The 54-year-old Milei describes himself as what would be a libertarian or capitalist in the United States. He's an outspoken advocate for economic liberalism and a fiscal conservative. Milei draws his economic philosophy from a wider range of thinkers and economists, spanning from a classical figure like Adam Smith to a modern theorist like Milton Friedman. He has made deep cuts to the bloated Argentinian government. When I visited Argentina about 6 years ago, the people I met all wanted dollars. They kept them at home, not in a bank. They did not trust their currency or their banks. I am glad these people finally have a good president. What caused him to pop up on Saving America was his recent award of the 2025 Genesis Prize. This is also known as the Jewish Nobel Prize. The award mentions his support for Israel, achievements in reforming Argentina's economy, and pursuit of justice for the AMIA terror victims. Milei was the unanimous choice of the 9 judges on this committee. Also noted was his unequivocal support of Israel during one of the most difficult times since the founding of the Jewish state. President Milei recently announced his decision to move the Argentinian embassy to Jerusalem, and he has reversed years of anti-Israel votes by Argentina in the United Nations. Importantly, he has promised to bring justice for the AMIA terror attack, which was in 1994 in Buenos Aires. The acronym stands for Argentine Israelite Mutual Association, a Jewish community center. A suicide bombing took 85 lives and injured over 300. It is the deadliest terror attack in Argentine history. At the time, Argentina was home to a Jewish community of 200,000, making it the largest in Latin America and the 6th largest in the world outside of Israel. The attack has never been solved, and there are recent allegations that the prior government was impeding that investigation. Therefore, Saving America awards an A grade to President Javier Milei for demonstrating how to cut government and reform his country while at the same time supporting the democracy of Israel.
Sustained.
Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. The U.S. Supreme Court rejects appeal over patent validity in a U.S. Postal Service case. Suppose your company has a patent dispute with a government agency. Well, that is what happened in this case. SCOTUS declined to review a decision that invalidated a patent held by Return Mail Incorporated at the request of the U.S. Postal Service, USPS. The company Return Mail, that's the name of the company, sued the USPS in 2011 in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. It accused the agency of violating its patent rights and technology for processing undelivered mail to be returned to senders. I'm fascinated by this concept since my mailbox is flooded with junk bulk mail, and I've started to reject it to make them stop sending me this garbage. In any event, after rather striking delay, the reports are that the Federal Claims Court ruled in 2022, 11 years later, that the patent was invalid because it just related to automating something that was presently done manually. So it did not meet the critical standard of novelty, usefulness, and non-obviousness required to obtain a patent. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit then upheld the Claims Court decision in February. Return Mail then asked the Supreme Court in July to reconsider the case, and as noted, SCOTUS has just taken a pass. The issue is one that is coming up more and more in the patent life. When is something eligible to be patented? Humans are able to discover things in nature, for example, that were not previously discovered, but are simply discoveries, not actual inventions. The challenge is referred to as abstract ideas. A 2014 SCOTUS ruling established a 2-part eligibility test. A court must determine if an invention involves an unpatentable abstract idea, natural phenomenon, or law of nature. If so, is there an actual invention related to this discovery? So, unfortunately, this patent path is muddied up, and the current rulings are more like playing craps than a predictable process towards generally expensive to obtain patents.
I'll allow it.
What will really happen with Iran and those nukes? The U.S. has now had 2 rounds of talks with Iran about preventing them from getting nukes. My take is that this is unlikely to get an acceptable agreement. Iran cannot be trusted and appears to be just buying time since they are so close to producing weapons-grade uranium. To make a point, the U.S. Navy sent another carrier strike force to the Middle East. However, most experts feel that the likely outcome is another Israeli bombing excursion to take out remaining nuke production facilities with U.S. support. The irony is that many countries in the Middle East now support the Israeli-USA position since they want peace and prosperity, not endless war threats from the wackos in Iran.
Order in the court.
An incredible quick hit. This is a report we credit to the Gateway Pundit. They report that recently Dylan Bryan Adams, a fiscal policy analyst for Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, was reportedly caught on camera keying as many as 6 Teslas with damages estimated at as much as $20,000. However, the Soros-backed county attorney, Mary Moriarty, will not sink criminal charges. He will be subjected to an alternative discipline per the report. The article also suggests that the Minneapolis police are outraged at how this is being handled.
Motion denied.
Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I am sure that you will agree with me that she deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Etzi Lazarian, who learned leadership skills early in life, completing her mandatory service in the Israeli Defense Forces, known as IDF, of course, where she rose to become staff sergeant in the Givati Brigade, an elite infantry unit. She followed that by completing both her BA in finance and her MBA at the University of Derby in the United Kingdom. Several years later, Etty moved to the United States to become a god, General Operations Director for Insignia LLC, where she oversees a variety of real estate projects that the firm handles. As well as being involved in Insignia, Etty, as a family office principal, oversees family investments in other asset categories. One of her interests is the evolution of EV technologies, and she directs investments into various projects around that space. One of her deepest passions in life is philanthropy, a passion she has passed on to her 3 daughters. She is involved in projects from food distribution during the COVID crisis to arranging small suitcases for children in shelters. That passion continues with new projects of each and every day under a simple philosophy: be kind. We welcome Etty Lazarian for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, David, for this warm introduction.
Well, we're delighted to have you. We've been in communication with you for several months here, and we've been trying to coordinate schedules. So we're just super happy that you were able to work us into your schedule.
Yes, thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited about this beautiful opportunity. Thank you.
And we're excited about having you here. As you know, we ask 3 prepared questions, and then we wrap up. You have an amazing background with your experience in the Israeli military and then to the UK and then from there to the United States. What brought you to the USA and how would you compare it to where you've been previously?
You know, beginning of my career was in the military, where I learned the meaning and understood what hard work really is. I mean, you're working hard, but this is to protect your life, to protect your country. So I think it's really important for every person really to join the army, to understand what it is to actually protect the land that you live on. And then from there, you can go into business or whatever you choose to go in your life. But I feel like it gives you like a really good ground. And also the army gives you like really good protocols, teaches you how to do things. Because if you're not following protocols in the army, you die. So it's really important to follow those procedures, and this is what I'm implementing in my business as well. Once we understand how things work and we make them work in a proper way, we elevate it to the next level and to the next level. I started small in business. My business career started actually in Guangzhou, China. I used to travel there and import things from there. I used to work in London. I used to work in Oxford, in Israel, of course. And when I came to America, I scaled it to the next level and I went into real estate, which, of course, we started small with small properties, and now we have much larger scale of operation. And this is what we do.
Well, it sounds like you've covered quite a bit of the world, and I've worked a little bit along those lines, but mostly as a tourist. But it sounds like some very cool things to do. So you were involved
Yes.
in many types of businesses, especially real estate projects. You emphasize a strong focus on diversity. Explain how that helps to move your investing forward and the types of investments that you do.
So I think our specialty is moving with the market. So whatever we do now, it doesn't mean that that's what we're going to do 5 years from now. We do have a protocol and a good 5-10 year plan of how we're taking the company and in what direction we're moving. But we're very big in working with the community, working with municipalities, working with individuals. I do a lot of work with young female entrepreneurs. If they want to start a business, I guide them how to do it. And I'm trying to implement everything I have going on in the community into my business. And so far, it's going very well. I can say that we started with residential townhouses. We moved into mixed use, shopping centers, retail. I built a lot of restaurants in my career. And now we're doing office building, multifamily, and a lot of projects that helps the community and create, really good things for the community, where there is a hero unit, where I put a lot of police officers and firemen in my multifamily units, and whatever we can do to help the community and elevate the environment that we are living in.
And how do you tie that to the approach to diversity?
How do I tie? We listen. I think my biggest talent of what I do is actually I am boots in the ground, and I listen to the community and I understand what the community is in need. If it's a community center event, so where we're building the centers, the mixed use that we're building, we're allocating a certain area for the community center. We are allocating certain areas for really whatever the community, like a little park, a little mommy and me classes that we do. I actually take the time and walk all the properties that we have and listen to what people are in need. And I think that's the little edge that we have going for us. And that's why we're so successful at what we do, because we really listen to the need and we supply the need that people have.
And you've emphasized philanthropy in your endeavors. What do you recommend to other small and family businesses in terms of how do you become involved in such positive projects?
I think, sorry, I disconnected it. Philanthropy. I have a different approach about philanthropy. The way I look at philanthropy is you have to, not everybody, but many people approach philanthropy is, if I have $1 million, I'm going to give it to a certain organization, and this is my philanthropic mission. For me, the way I look at it, this is donation. You just made a donation. Thank you so much for a donation. It's fantastic. We really appreciate it. But for me, philanthropy is actually go to the ground level and understand what people are in need. And I think the best example I can give you is those suitcases that we did for the children. I volunteer with my children at, it's called Loving Hands. It's a women and children shelter. And we saw my daughter, I think she was 4 years old, and we saw a beautiful, young, gorgeous, blonde kid, blue eyes, beautiful, beautiful little angel. He came with this giant hefty bag because his mom said, we have to leave the house immediately before daddy will kill us. And she just went like this, and she collected everything from the closet and put it in a large hefty bag. And this 4-year-old is walking around this hefty bag. And my daughter is like, this is just horrible. What can we do for him? And I'm like, Mia, what do you think will make him happy? And she said, I think we should buy him a Batman bag. Let's buy him a nice Batman suitcase. So we went to Walmart and we saw the Batman suitcase. And then we talked to the manager of Walmart was there, surprisingly enough. And this is also a philanthropic, entrepreneurial adventure for her, because she just figured out that she could ask the Walmart guy, but she could buy a suitcase for $20, but she could also ask the Walmart manager to donate 100 suitcases, and then she can give it to the shelter, and all those children that pass through the shelter will have Elsa bag or a princess bag or a Batman or Spider-Man or whatever you want. And she told the manager what happened, and immediately he gave her what she asked. So that was a teaching moment for my young child about business. You want something, you see something, target it, make it a mission for yourself to get it done, and you will get it done. And the satisfaction that a 4-year-old has to do something so great for the community, you can't translate it to anything. This is something remarkable.
How old are your daughters now?
So my daughters now are 17, 15, and 13. We started philanthropic mission, but we don't call it mission, we call it a mitzvah. Being Jewish, we call it a mitzvah. So I'm teaching my girls to be good people. I'm teaching them to listen to their environment. I'm teaching them small acts of kindness, to open the door if someone needs the door open for them, help a lady carry the bag to her second floor if she lives in the second floor. Just be aware of what's around you. If someone needs help, just help them. And you'll be surprised, people are just like this. They don't see what's completely ambivalent to the environment. They don't see what's going on around them. And I think that's our biggest disadvantage that we have as a community. We used to be a little village, but now we're so big and there are so many people around us. But that's what happens.
It's interesting you say that. And part of that is what I call good manners. And I grew up, my mother had poor balance. So she was naturally left-handed. And in Catholic school, they hit her left hand with a ruler to force her to write right-handed. This, of course, is in the 1930s. And the superstition was that left-handed people were at a disadvantage or bad people. So in any event, apparently, if you're forced to write with the wrong hand, it affects your balance. So I had very stable gait. I was my mom's escort. And so my mother had read Emily Post, which was a big, thick book on manners, including how you put silverware out and all that. So even though we grew up very poor, I was taught very basic manners. You always open the door for a woman. You always open the door for an elderly person. You always help people. I mean, it was not charity. It was part of what you did as a responsible person who was not disabled and not elderly or whatever. And it's interesting today because just a minor thing. Like any, professional couple, like we go out to dinner as recently as last night, the night before with different couples. And it's amazing to me is how many people, men will jump in, men are usually the drivers, will jump in their car and their lady friend will be
My husband included. My husband including. Doctor.
But it's just it's just fascinating because I can't conceptualize doing that because it was so ingrained in me to make sure that my mom was safe, she was in the house, in the vehicle, whatever you're doing. So I think we could hopefully we're going to return to better manners. And
you are the last gentleman alive, Doctor. You are the last one.
I'm arguing that we're going to bring it back, and I think that ties in with charity because some of what you mentioned is good manners as well as
it's being aware. It's just being aware, Doctor. It's just being aware. It's just looking around you, see the need, identify the need, and that's what makes you a good businessman. That's what makes you a good philanthropist. That's what makes you a good person. Just look around you, see what people need, identify it, and move forward with it. This is the way I look at things.
Well, it sounds like a very healthy approach. And that sounds like you're doing a wonderful job of bringing your daughters around, and they're going to be an asset to the community for many decades to come. And as you know, we try and keep these interviews short because we interview busy people like you. We don't want to take you off track too much. But tell our audience how do they get information on you, your company, and your charitable activities? How do they get that information?
So my company is Insignia LLC, so insigniacra.com. You can go online and see everything that we have, all the projects we have. If you want to invest with us, you're welcome to come and invest. We have amazing projects. All the projects are around the community. All the projects are live, play, work. We do everything together. It's like you don't really need to leave the area. You don't even need a car. You have the restaurants, you have your apartment, you have whatever you need, office buildings, everything in one community area, which is amazing, I think, what we do. Regarding the philanthropic work, we have Lazarian Girls Do Good, Be Good. It's that simple. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, Lazarian Girls Do Good, Be Good. It's just simple philosophy of life. Be a good person. Do good things. Be kind to the person next to you. Everything we are and everything I am is all about kindness and understanding and talking to people and being accepting and understanding that sometimes some people are mean one day or having a bad day, but it's just that moment. They're just having a bad day or a bad moment in that moment. And always keep your mind open. Always give the people the benefit of the doubt. When I talk about philanthropy, it's a simple thing. I go in front of children and I say, okay, I'm a philanthropist. I want to be a philanthropist. This is my lifelong dream. I'm a philanthropist. I don't have any money. I take my pockets out. I have no money. What can I do? I don't have any $1 to give you. I got nothing. What can I do? And kids themselves come up with this amazing idea. Girls have beautiful long hair. They donate their hair to Locks of Love, to kids with cancer. Beautiful ballerinas can dance. We go to the elderly home and we entertain the elderly and we teach them how. We don't really teach them, but we show them how to dance, and we show the elderly lady how to hold the hand like this and how to move. And it's also making them smile and laugh, and everybody's giggling. And it's really, really sweet. We go to the dog shelter. We read a book for the dogs. So young kids that just learning now how to read, they're practicing their reading, but they're reading to the dog. So they make even a bigger effort to read a full book to the dog, because the dog is by himself and nobody talks to him. And the dogs are just so happy to see the kids coming and taking them out for a walk and talking to them. So anybody can be a philanthropist. Any person in the world can be a philanthropist. It's just wanting and understanding that there is a need out there and fulfilling the need and not trusting someone else to do it. You always say, okay, this dog is going to be fine. This person is going to be fine. Someone is going to take care of him. Be that someone. Raise up. Elevate yourself and make sure that you rose up for the occasion and you took care of the issue that was in hand.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Google took a big hit in federal courts in an antitrust case. Experts project that Google may be forced to divest its Chrome web browser. This is a moving target. It'll be a while before this sorts out. We'll keep you posted.
Sustained.
No surprise here. Dems are slow learners. Back-to-back pathetic performances by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden prove that there is no learning curve for the Dems. Harris' presentation was a mess. If she wanted to show herself as a potential governor for California and/or a future presidential candidate, she blew it in her typical fashion. If anything, she has declined since her horrible run for president. Then somebody let Demented Joe have a press conference after his ridiculous performance at an event a couple weeks ago. Hiding these two is the only strategy that would work for the Dems right now.
This session is adjourned.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.